This is episode number 12 with David Schiesher. Welcome to Currently Wearing Presents. I am Miriam, a lifestyle blogger living in Switzerland. I believe that mindfulness, awareness, and gratitude are three keys to happy and fulfilled life. Each week, we introduce you to inspiring people from Switzerland and abroad, and we hope that their thoughts will open your mind and change your life. Today, Currently Wearing presents David Schiesher. David is an American clinical social worker practicing individual and couples therapy in Geneva. David and I met many years ago, and I always liked the peaceful and calm energy that he emanates. And when I decided to start to interview people that make an impact on lives of others, he was on my list. Talking to him is so interesting and refreshing that you will forget about time. It happened to me, and we went so over time that I decided to cut this interview into two parts. In the first part that you will hear now, we discuss 4 methods that he uses to help his clients, how to deal with an addiction, and the impact of social media on children and how to prevent it. In the second part, we will discuss how to build sound and long-term relationships. So without further ado, here is David Schiesher. Hi David, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Miriam?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having us. Can you introduce your work to our listeners? What methods do you use?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'm a therapist trained in clinical social work. Graduated with a master's in social work back in 1985 from Rutgers University in New Jersey. And since then, I've been working here in Geneva since 2006. And there's 4 primary ways that I work. The first one is a person-centered approach, or also called Rogerian. This is a way of really focusing on the client and making sure that I am listening to them, giving them unconditional positive regard, that I am asking them what they want to accomplish, and then helping them to achieve what they want to accomplish, to achieve their goals. So it's really the therapist paying attention to the client. The second method that I use is CBT, or cognitive behavior therapy, and this is about helping a person understand how powerful their thoughts are. So if a person is thinking negative thoughts, those thoughts are going to trigger some uncomfortable emotions, perhaps, and they will not be having a good day or not be feeling very good. If they're having positive thoughts, then they're going to be feeling much better, more positive, more happy, um, and their outlook will be more optimistic. So it's really, most of us don't really pay attention to our thoughts. So if I can help a client to pay more attention to their thoughts and realize that they can change their thoughts in order to achieve what they want to achieve in life, then that's a very powerful realization to have. My third modality is psychodynamic approach, and this, just to simplify it, means that I pay attention to a person's past, especially past memories or experiences that may have been traumatic or difficult for them and have produced an intense emotion. And sometimes those people carry that emotion around with them through the years without really paying attention to it or processing that emotion to get that emotion out of their system. I can't help them to forget a past experience, but I can help them to release the emotions connected to that experience. And that's the psychodynamic approach. And one of the ways that I help them to release the emotions from their experience is using this method called emotional freedom technique, or tapping. And that's where I teach them to tap on certain points on their body, some of the same points that you would use in acupuncture. And this, while we're talking about the emotions that they want to release or the past experiences, and this helps them to actually release and detach the emotions from the experiences. It's a body-mind technique. And the fourth method that I'm just beginning to use after going through a 3-year training, I'm just finishing up that training, is called Hakomi. And Hakomi is a mindful, body-based type of psychotherapy, also called assisted self-discovery, where the therapist assists the client to go inward. A lot of times it's the client closes their eyes and goes into a mindful state and shares with the therapist what's going on inside, and then the therapist guides them to experience different things or to look at some core issues, to look at the effects of those core issues or beliefs, and then to help them to have some, to provide some missing experience in the end. So at the end of each session, a client may walk out realizing that they touched a core issue and they progressed in dealing with that core issue and getting something that they had been missing in their lives. So those are the methods that I use both in individuals, with individuals and with couples, and I also work with couples using a variety of techniques.
Do you believe that giving up an addiction starts in your mind? For example, your partner suffers from an addiction and it affects your life, also your life as a couple or a family. At the same time, you don't want to leave him or her because you still care for him or her. What would you advise to that person? Where is the border between caring for yourself and being selfish?
That's a really good question and a very complex question. Let me start with the first part where you ask if dealing with an addiction starts in the mind. I believe that most addictions, and I'm going to lump them all together, start because of some very difficult emotions that we're feeling in our bodies. And whether it's food that we're using or drugs or alcohol or some process like relationships or gambling that or spending, that all of those addictions are trying to distract us from or even to medicate the emotions that we don't want to face in our lives and that we don't have any other way of dealing with. And so we go to an easy way of drinking some alcohol to forget about the difficult emotions. So this therapist in the United States by the name of Ann Wilson Schaaf refers to addiction as a progressive disease, and unless it's treated, it gets worse and worse. So this speaks to the second part of your question about partners who are whose partners are addicted to something, and what do you do? How do you behave with your partner to help them with the addiction? So also a very difficult situation, but the partner of the addict must be quite strong and must insist that the addict seeks some kind of treatment, because if they don't, the addiction most likely would just get worse and worse and worse. Treatment has to be pursued diligently until it is mastered and under control, because these addictions have a tendency to relapse. So the partners, on one hand, have to be very patient, and on the other hand, have to be quite strong and insistent that the treatment is continued. So, of course, it's a hard decision need to be made by the partner of the addict about, depending on the intensity of the addiction and the effect that it's having on the life of their family or their couple. Leaving the relationship, separating from the addict may be a necessary action to take, especially because it may allow the addict to hit rock bottom. And a lot of times if the addict doesn't hit rock bottom, they see no reason to change, or no reason to go through a very difficult and long and expensive treatment process for the addiction. And once an addict, I don't want to say always an addict, but it's something that has to be paid attention to for the rest of their lives, because relapse is always possible, always a possibility. And then the hitting bottom is also a very delicate process, because they have to hit bottom in such a way that they still feel that there's hope to recover, instead of becoming suicidal or just losing hope altogether. So a partner's role in that might be a combination of leaving them and also staying in touch enough to be supportive, or find somebody who can be supportive to them when they hit rock bottom. It's very important to care for yourself, and caring for yourself becomes an example that you set for the addict that you're connected to, because the addict is not taking care of themselves. They're just, they're not taking care of the emotions that they don't want to face and to process. So you can be a great role model if you demonstrate how to take care of yourself. It's not being selfish. Being selfish is not caring about, not even thinking about the health or the well-being of the other, and only thinking about yourself. And this is very different, where you're thinking about yourself and giving yourself just as much care and concern, and meeting your own needs, and seeing that your needs are just as important as the other person's.
Is it still relevant that you can relapse even if you dealt with the primary emotion or not?
It's much less likely for a person to relapse if they've adequately dealt with the emotions that are causing the addictive behavior in the first place. However, that said, addictions, depending on how many years they have been going on for, can become habitual. And a lot of associations in our lives and our actions can be associated with these addictive processes or substances. So even after the emotions are dealt with, the habits in life also have to be dealt with, and substituting more positive habits for the more destructive habits connected with the addiction.
As a therapist, you meet clients who deal with different issues. What do you think that is the biggest problem in our current society? Can love, consciousness, and gratitude heal all?
The biggest problem, as I see, the most frequent issues that clients come in to talk to me about, really have to do with depression, anxiety, and stress. Depression, anxiety being mood disorders. And if we look at what's going on in the world today, there's a lot of reasons to either be fearful or depressed or stressed. We have climate change, we have forest fires, we have political upheaval, we have earthquakes, we have hurricanes, we have floods, we have diseases. We have so many things going on in the world today that perhaps are not so different than the world hundreds of years ago. But today, the difference is we know about everything that's going on because of the media and the internet, and the access to information is at our fingertips. So it's quite common for people to focus on those things to such an extent that they become depressed, anxious, or stressed. You're asking if love, consciousness, and gratitude can heal all. And I would say it can go a really long ways toward healing, and healing the attitude, or healing the perspective or the result of focusing on all the terrible things that are going on in the world, is more of a way of how we perceive the world, and what we focus on when we read the newspapers, when we watch television news. We can have different perspectives. And if we have a perspective of love, we can stay out of fear, because love cannot exist, or fear cannot exist where there's love, and vice versa. Having consciousness, being aware of ourselves, is a positive thing. And it's, meditation is so vitally important to having a sense of yourself, to feeling grounded in the world, to feeling like you're connected to yourself, to other people, to the planet. Extremely important. Gratitude is an attitude that is vitally important in looking at the world in such a way that you appreciate who you are, you appreciate the people around you, you appreciate what you have, you appreciate the life that you have. Even if you're in the midst of a difficult experience, you can still find things to appreciate. You can still find the silver lining in the dark cloud. So, in addition to love, consciousness, and gratitude, I would say that another problem is a lack of a spiritual belief system. For example, if we look at all the risks or all the dangers happening in the world, it could come down to, what if I get involved in one of those risks? What happens if I get injured? What happens if I die? And the spiritual belief systems of the world can help us to have a belief about what happens after we die. And if we have a belief about what happens after we die, we can feel much more secure than if we have no belief about that. And if we feel like we're just floating in a world of danger and in a world where we don't have any answers to anything. Having spiritual beliefs may not be an absolute answer for what happens after we die, but it certainly can, at least during our lifetime, give us a sense of security. Even if what we believe happens after we die is not true, let's say we believe that there's, from say a Buddhist perspective, we believe that there's multiple lifetimes and there's reincarnation, and this is just one lifetime of 100 lifetimes, and it's all about continuous learning and growth and maturation and evolution. Even that can give us a sense of security during a lifetime, and a sense of, oh, this is just one of many lifetimes, so I can take risks, and if I die, it's not so horrible because I'm coming back again. Even if we get to the end of our lifetime and we die, and that's not true, and there's nothing, and there's just blackness and a void after we die, we won't be around to know that that has occurred. Our consciousness won't exist anymore, so we won't suffer, but we will have enjoyed a lifetime of relative peace and security and happiness. So, I believe that the benefits to having some spiritual beliefs that make us feel more comfortable during a lifetime is absolutely worth it than to live a lifetime of worry and fear and insecurity, not knowing what's going to happen at the point of death.
Another positive thing can be that you're actually nicer to people. If you're happy and if you're in peace, you will be nice to them because you're happy as a person, and happy people don't create pain in others.
Yeah, I think that's exactly correct. People who are more in peace, who have some kind of belief system, tend to treat other people out of their sense of security, and there would be no reason to then bully somebody or be mean to somebody or try to knock somebody down because we feel we're doing okay. And there's no reason to try to knock somebody down to our level as if we had low self-esteem or were in a bad place in life or had been victimized many times.
What goes around comes around. So if you do that, it will come back to you. How can we change the effect that social media have on young people? I find that it can generate an unhealthy comparison, envy, and depression if we believe what we see.
Yeah, I think this is a really difficult and really important issue that we have right now in our culture and our society, and it's affecting everyone, not just young people, but especially young people. And I think Parents have a huge role to play in the exposure that their children have to phones, iPhones, and smartphones, and laptops, and iPads, and television, because principle that we are affected by everything that we are exposed to, whether it's our friends or whether it's the television we watch or the social media that we expose ourselves to. We're affected by all of it. We become what we are exposed to, because what we're exposed to affects our thinking, and our thinking affects our beliefs affects our emotions, and our emotions affects our actions and behaviors. So it's really, really important for parents to be aware of this, and to control the access that their developing children and with their developing minds and emotions have, by limiting social media, limiting screens in households. It's a battle that gets more difficult with age, so it needs to be started at a very young age. I don't have any very specific recommendations other than trying to limit it to a couple of hours a week, perhaps, and perhaps limiting it totally during the week with school-age children, and giving them a couple hours perhaps each day on the weekend. And in addition to just limiting the access to social media, I would say also have discussions with your children about values, and help them to feel good about themselves. A healthy family atmosphere will go a long way toward helping, raising healthy children who feel good about themselves. And when they feel good about themselves, even when they are exposed to unhealthy comparison and unhealthy, body image in social media, they will not be as affected by it as they would be if they have lower self-esteem or lower self-image or lacking self-confidence. So this is something that can happen on at least these two fronts of limiting exposure, and then giving them the values where when they get old enough, they can choose their own exposure to social media and screens, and hopefully the values that the parents have given them will help them make good, healthy choices about what they expose themselves to.
Thank you for listening to the first part of our interview with David Schiesher. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, currently Wearing Presents, on YouTube, iTunes or SoundCloud. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.